Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a new session within the RNI Days dedicated to the European Innovation Council. This session this morning will discuss about one of the novelties that we intend to introduce in the Future Framework Programme for Research and Innovation, Horizon Europe, in the context of the third pillar, which is the EIC Forum. I'm Jean-David Malo. I'm the director in charge of the EIC task force, and I will be the moderator of this session. In introduction, I just would like to tell you a few words about what it is, the EIC Forum, because it's a novelty. The EIC Forum, in fact, is a particular tool that we intend to use in order to prepare, discuss openly with any relevant innovation actors coming from the academic world, coming from the enterprise world, coming from investors, but coming also from the policymaker world, any actions that can contribute to stimulate the innovation ecosystem in Europe, to ensure optimal conditions for developing and connecting the European innovation ecosystem with a special focus, in particular, on better regulation for innovation, to facilitate the connectedness of the different actors within the ecosystem, as well as between various ecosystems in Europe and beyond, taking into account, of course, the potential of internationalization of our company. And last but not least, because things must be concrete at the end, making better use of existing instruments and develop new innovation tools. So a very ambitious place, but a place where the objective will be to have open discussion in order to prepare subsequently initiatives that can be discussed with policymakers. For this session today, we have the chance to have among us very distinguished speakers. They are coming from various horizons linked to the innovation world. And I propose to start to give them one by one the possibility to introduce themselves. First, I will start by Heidi Kako, which is a very important member of our EIC Advisory Board. Heidi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jean-David. Good morning. As said, my name is Heidi Kako, and I'm one of the members of the Advisory Board of the EIC. In addition to that, I have been engaged with the development of the innovative ecosystem of Estonia for more than a decade. I have been a part of the grassroots level as a jury member of Prototyping Association, and also currently I'm working as a partner of the growth fund of BoldCap. So a wide diversity of different aspects of innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Gentlemen, you will allow me to give then the floor to the second lady that we have with us, which is the chair of the EIT Governing Board, among other duties. So I give the floor for a short introduction to Ms. Gioia Ghezzi.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. I'm Gioia Ghezzi. I'm the chair of the European Institute for Innovation and Technology, which has been at the forefront of innovative ecosystems across Europe for 10 years, really stimulating innovation in 8 specific different fields.
Thank you and welcome also, Gioia. We have Mark Ferguson. Mark is, of course, the Director General of Science Foundation Ireland, but he is also the chair of the first EIC Advisory Board. Mark?
So thank you very much. As you say, I'm Mark Ferguson. I'm the Director General of Science Foundation Ireland and the Chief Scientific Advisor to the Government of Ireland. And it's been my great privilege to chair the Advisory Board of the European Innovation Council, where we're really trying to get the EIC to mirror best practice around the world, to mirror practice in the private sector from investors, to add real value in terms of technology development and growing and scaling small companies. And it's really important that we engage with the ecosystem in member states, in other parts of the European Union, colleagues in the EIT, ERC, missions, and so on. And also at the grassroots with innovators to make sure that we are delivering on our mission, which is really to be the investor of choice for entrepreneurs within Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And last but not least, of course, Dietmar Awf, which is the director of the Max Planck Institute for Innovation and Competition, also head of the Commission for the establishment of the German Agency for Disruptive Innovation, among other duties, but maybe you can tell us more, Dietmar.
Merci, Jean-David. I'm very happy to be here. I'm an engineer who turned into an economist. I study innovation systems. As you just said, we yesterday kicked off the Agency for Radical Innovation. I'm now a supervisory board member. I've also started a few entrepreneurship centers at German universities, a few startups, and the German accelerator who takes German startups into Silicon Valley, which is a place, by the way, where a lot of Europeans meet. And maybe we can turn Europe back into a meeting point, and I'm sure that the Council can contribute to that.
Thanks a lot to all of you. To start our discussion, I would be very happy to listen from you regarding your vision of who are the main actors we should involve in the EIC Forum. I mean, from foundation to universities, from investors to innovators. You know that one of the objectives of the EIC Forum is really to promote an inclusive approach and to take into account all the various dimensions in order to nurture a really connected, innovative ecosystem in Europe. What are your views about this? Maybe we can start, ladies first, by Joya.
Thank you, Jean-David. It's a very important point. Obviously, a forum will have the task of bringing together all the stakeholders along the value chain of innovation. So from researchers, students, even all the way to the investors, young companies, startups, accelerators, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure each of us has plenty of networks. But I think also that the EIC Forum could have the ambition of helping to join together the fragmented European market, which is something that also at EIT on innovation, we are very much trying to do. So become a forum of fora, if you allow me the pun, a place where, for example, the fora of individual member states come together, and where policy to improve the innovation ecosystem to attract back people, as we were just saying, from Silicon Valley or indeed Asia nowadays back to Europe happens. So I have in mind a forum of fora.
Many thanks for this important input. Just for you to know, and for the audience to know, this afternoon in a restricted session, we will have also an in-depth discussion about the EIC Forum with Member States representatives, also along these lines. Heidi, what are your views?
Thank you. Definitely, I support what has been said already, but I explicitly want to stress that we need to involve the private sector to validate the idea of the forum as they are the essential part of the ecosystem. The entrepreneurs, the founders, they are the core, the base that innovation actually is translated from the research and science into action. And definitely there are a large group of other stakeholders that are definitely needed in order to have the complete ecosystem, and that they are acting in their supportive roles as investors do very often, and also large corporates. But very often these partners are also more organized. It's very common that the entrepreneurs and the founders that are not so formally organized, they focus on execution and not on the policy. And that is why we need the platform to give the possibility to get their voice through. And the national agencies have a very important role in that. It can be top-down, bottom-up. It has to be the both ways. The national agencies as intermediaries to get the grassroots voices up to the top level of policy. And we need all that information as the input in order to develop the policies that actually support the ecosystem. So it's like the startups do it in a very nice way. If they think that there is a problem that they can solve, they go and ask from the target group whether the problem is real and how they can actually address that problem, whether the value proposition actually addresses the problem. And there is one more issue I would like to bring in, that is the diversity. Not the voice of all groups is yet represented on an equal level. We may say that in the 21st century in Europe, the females, it's not possible that the females are not heard, and I'm really absolutely glad to see that in even R&I days, we have a lot of female speakers, absolutely wonderful women, telling their stories and contributing, but it's not always the same. And the issue probably is that those less represented groups do not belong so much, again, in those formal organizations or formal bodies. And it is a kind of a loop. If you have a stronger position, there is more research, more science, more funding, more action, and more voice. And I definitely see that the EIC Forum could be a perfect platform to bring all the voices to be heard.
Many thanks for this very important input. Also, I'm noting in particular, of course, the involvement of the private sector, which is absolutely obvious. The key role of national agencies in the context you mentioned. And certainly we'll come back a bit later with another question on the topic to be addressed, and I noted in particular diversity in this context. Mark, what are your thoughts?
I think a very important principle is that the voice of the innovator and the entrepreneur is heard, and they are central. I think it's also really important to understand that this is an ecosystem. It's not a competition. So we actually want the national agencies to be working hand in glove with the European Innovation Council. We want the other European programs to be working hand in glove. We want the private sector, investors and corporates to be working hand in glove. And of course, it is a bit of a competition amongst the entrepreneurs because everybody wants to identify and fund what they think are the most interesting, the best companies. So really building up the mentoring to allow companies and entrepreneurs with a great idea, with a great technology to be able to develop that and scale it. That's got to be part of the ecosystem network effect. And then it's also got to be a network amongst the actors within that so that they understand that the rules are actually not competitive, they're actually complementary. For example, the EIT may be bootstrapping up companies, the national agency may be providing catalytic funding and mentoring, and then the companies can grow to the next level and scale. So that kind of environment, I think, is really important. And the last thing I would say is that peer-to-peer learning for entrepreneurs is very important. If you talk to someone who's been at the next stage where you want to go, maybe they've done an IPO, maybe they've done a big deal with a corporate, maybe they've raised a large financing round, networking across various levels is a way in which entrepreneurs and founders learn a lot. Because you can have conversations there that are actually quite difficult to have in public. You can say, who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Who should I avoid? What mistakes did you make? All that kind of stuff. So creating that ecosystem where you have very successful companies at different stages, where you have companies that have hit a problem at different stages and then pivoted, and where you have people just starting out. There's a lot of good peer-to-peer learning, and that is of value to the entrepreneur.
Many thanks also, Mark, and if I may insist on some of your key points, working hand in hand, not in a competition way. Of course, competition is important, but for another purpose, ensuring therefore complementarity between the various actors and between the various institutions, and the key importance of networking and peer learning. I mean, absolutely important issues. Dietmar, what are your thoughts?
So many things have been said, and let me of course applaud them. I think the forum is in a unique position to complement, as was just said, to combine, to bring together. We're sometimes not just fragmented at the national level, we're also fragmented at the institutional level. So bringing all these pillars, the types, the sectors, the country representatives and the agencies together is very important. But let me pitch for one other group of innovators, which I learned from the first session of the supervisory board of our Agency for Radical Innovation is also there. Those are the unorthodox innovators, the nerdy types, the diamonds in the rough, the high potentials that haven't been recognized yet. And just to give you an example, at the 50th anniversary of NASA's moon landing, somebody from Europe was invited to give a keynote. And that person is an innovator, but has never received any funding from any science promotion agency or innovation promotion agency in Europe, because we don't know him. So I'm very much in favor of looking at these guerrilla types, bottom-up types. And the forum, I think, is well positioned to sort of head scouting activities that brings us in contact with these hidden strengths of the European ecosystem.
Many thanks for this adding also, Dietmar, these unorthodox innovators, as you called them. Indeed, I mean, and this is also one of our objectives in the context of the European Innovation Council, as you know. And this is, of course, a challenge, but this will require to find ways to identify them. But we are, as you know, working on them. I think a lot already was said there, but I'd like to listen from you regarding what you consider as actors in the innovation ecosystem today, what you consider as the main policy issues that we should address in the EIC Forum. Because Heidi said clearly in the first part of our talk that it should be also one of the key roles of the EIC Forum to help to sometimes for a number of issues that the innovators are facing, to help to inform the policymakers on where there are difficulties and what could be the solutions. But maybe you have already ideas in your mind on the basis of your experience on where we should start working regarding some policy issues. I would propose this time to go on the reverse order. So Dietmar, what are your thoughts?
Gladly. And I think what we can do here to respond to your question is to make good use of Europe's strength. And I see two strengths in particular. One is diversity, and the other one is scale. And we're not using or exploiting these to the very best we can do. So harmonization of the European market was already named, and there are some concrete things that the forum could focus on and that could lead to, for example, having legal forms, common legal forms for startups in Europe, and not sticking to the national forms. I would call one aspect, effective connectedness. We could connect the players in a much better way to overcome the national boundaries and to really collaborate in a European manner. And I think that will be very important. And we could go after an effective scaling of innovation procurement because we're losing too much power in procurement by not addressing innovation sufficiently. I know that the European Commission is doing a lot in this field, but we can become better. And my last point is COVID-19 has made all of us more digital. We have been forced into digitization. And that has generated, despite of the suffering that we have had, a lot of advances now. And I hope that the forum can only make a contribution to securing the advances, to making them more stable, more sustainable for the future, so that we can play a major role in the digital world as an ecosystem.
Many thanks, Dietmar, for this first thought. Already a lot, by the way, in what you are proposing. Mark.
So I think I would really echo the comments about procurement. I think there's a huge opportunity there, both for national governments and the European Union. And I think also the forum has to address what you might call the conventional issues that everyone will talk about, difficulty getting finance, connecting with corporates, learning how to scale the company. Those are all what I call known problems, and they're kind of not radical. Procurement's not radical. At the Founders Forum in London a couple of weeks ago, Eric Schmidt, ex-Google, was asked what he would do to stimulate innovation and the formation of successful new companies. And his answer was that volume was very important. So you had to have a lot of shots on goal. And so his radical idea was that you ought to be able to form a company in a day, and no national rules would apply apart from health and safety until you grew to 10 employees, and then all rules would apply. And he claimed that that would do more to kind of grow and start early companies and then sort out at the scaling who would be successful. I only raise that not as a suggestion from me, because it's not my idea, but actually that the forum should also think radically and innovatively. We should look at the existing problems, but we should also think about what can we do better, particularly in a European context where values such as addressing important societal problems like the green agenda, like good use of artificial intelligence to address important problems. All of those kind of issues could be looked at. Looking at our traditional strengths of some of the larger corporates that will have to pivot, the car industry, for example, pivoting towards electric vehicles or a more digital approach. So I think, trying to blend those kind of European values. On procurement, the US really wins in terms of military procurement. I mean, that's the basis of DARPA. And we need to think about how we can do something similar at a national and European level, really to place orders and products and to really purchase innovation. There are very few governments that buy innovation. They usually buy products off the shelf. So that's a real cultural change within the policy world that we probably need to do a lot more on.
Many thanks also, Mark, on this. Maybe before giving the floor to our other speakers, just a short reaction on my side on the key importance indeed of procurement. I'm sure that you have noted that in the legal basis of the Future Framework Programme for the EIC, it's clearly mentioned that we intend to use also innovative procurement in a different way. And for those who are interested, and I'm talking of course to the audience, now you have a bit later in the RNI Days program, a specific session where we would like to discuss how we could improve the way we are implementing innovative procurement in Europe, because it's clearly a key issue that we have to address, to be discussed, of course, in the context of the EIC Forum, to try to align the approach also with the various states, but some things that we should also certainly change at the level of the Union, despite some of the success that we had, but also taking into account the weakness of the current tools that we have for the time being. Heidi,
Yes, thank you. So many good things said. I think that we're living in a very interesting time. So COVID-19 definitely is a big problem. It is difficult, but it is also a kind of challenge that gives us the opportunity to move into the new business models. And if we think that what are the industries that have been affected the most, definitely there has to be the solution how to support them. But in that period, we can actually move into the new business models. And deep tech definitely is something to help us to be more ready to react to unknown. And just 3 keywords. I would love to have EIC Forum and Europe as the platform to be really agile and to cooperate between the member states that, for example, if we find a solution, a very good one in one country, how to address any of those global challenges that Europe is facing and the whole world is facing, then we can take that pilot and to enlarge it on the European level, to have the European systems and the ecosystem to support how to take the pilot projects to enlarge successfully on the European level. And that is one of the probably purposes of the EIC Forum, how to launch it.
Indeed, I can confirm that this is one of our ambition. Of course, the difficulty lies on how to do it, but it is indeed one of our ambition there to see what works somewhere and how it could be expanded for the benefit of the whole union. Gioia.
Well, I want to pick up on what my colleagues on the panel have already said, to stress that, small startups, in order to grow, need to go international. And in terms of policies, I think a task that perhaps is not very exciting but really needed is that of working perhaps with DG Reform to harmonize the administrative hurdles and obstacles that companies, below the 10 people, as Mark was relating from Eric Schmidt, to well above 10 people, find in different countries. A European company nowadays has to think from very, very early even where to incorporate because things are so different. I think this is, perhaps not a very exciting task, but one that we need to tackle if we want innovation really to thrive. And then there is another aspect, going from the minutiae to the very big things. There are issues, policy issues that are gigantic and no single company, no forum and no nation can tackle on their own. But if you are a company in that particular field, you need it addressed in order to thrive. I'll give you an example. If all the companies that we are financing in the area of sustainability came back to us and said, look, we really need a carbon pricing in order for things to really tip and for us to really move towards the Paris Agreement and beyond, then I think the forum should be the place where these topics are brought forward by a very large constituency, as we discussed earlier, that brings together the private sector, the investors, the entrepreneurs, the researchers, and the companies themselves, of course. So the two ends of the spectrum, I think, should be both addressed by such a forum.
Many thanks also, Joya, for this very valuable input. I would say that it is exciting to tackle the issue of harmonization or tackling administrative hurdles for example, for startups in Europe. Echoing also what Dietmar said in his own intervention. Just to highlight, I know that you are aware about this, but also for our audience, that this objective is already enshrined in the SME strategy communication that the Commission made a few months ago. Of course, it's not an easy path. But we have the ambition at the level of the Commission to tackle this issue. We still have a bit of time before moving to the question and answer session with the audience. I'd like maybe to come back on one of the various points that you made, and many thanks again for everything that you bring for our thought. You insisted, for example, on the importance to tackle in the world of innovation the issue of diversity. It's a real issue. But I'd like to listen from your ideas in order to tackle the issue we are facing. How to ensure, for example, that indeed we have more female innovators benefiting from support from public, but also from private money. I mean, because the issue is not only at the level of the public funding or any other issues that you may find. And diversity is not only a question of gender issue. I fully recognize this. But I'd like to listen from you about this. And maybe we can start again by our ladies. Heidi, what are your thoughts about this? Some tips that you would like to share with us.
And thank you for bringing that to the table again. And it is constantly the topic that we should keep on the table. My personal experience has been that I have always been working in that financial segment with a lot of wonderful male colleagues and not so many female colleagues. And I have given several speeches on that topic as well, being asked that how can you manage in that specific segment? And I would say that I still appreciate the situation that all the people are appraised and evaluated based on their expertise, not on their gender. And I think that regarding the gender issue, the female representation, that we have, yes, a lower share of female founders, but we also have a lower share of female investors, for example. It's like around 10%, not only in Europe, but also in the US and everywhere. It comes with changing the role models and changing the mindset and changing how actually the girls are raised. So that I shouldn't say that everybody has to be the same, that we don't need the different roles for females and males, but being open, showing the role models and supporting the destiny. That is something that I believe that Europe is very good, because we are so diversified anyway. And now we are more like within the boundaries or borders. And the more we support the openness and show the role models, the more we actually contribute to diversity in any groups.
Many thanks, Heidi. Joya.
Well, this is a topic that could take hours, but in a nutshell, diversity doesn't happen on its own. You have to stimulate it, to encourage it, to utilize what I describe as affirmative action. I am the first woman to lead the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. It didn't happen by chance. The board that first brought me to the board was very keen on gender diversity, and little by little, over time, built a board where the majority was women. and that board then brought me and the other colleagues through a journey that then led us where we are. So I would say that to have diversity, geographical diversity, background diversity, gender diversity, you have to search for what you are looking for, and you have to grow, to encourage, to bring along, to teach, to mentor, to nurture. Left on its own, it doesn't happen. I think it was the World Economic Forum that calculated at the current pace we would have gender parity in, I can't even remember, 123 years or something like that. So on its own, things are too slow. We need to have proactive policies to encourage diversity.
Thanks a lot, Joya. I'm sure it will stimulate also some reaction from our other speakers. Maybe Mark first.
Sure. So I would make a few comments. First of all, I think diversity is really important in innovation. Innovation arises when people often from different perspectives interact, and then you come up with something new. So it is a fundamental part of the innovative process. Secondly, diversity is commercially very important. I mean, there are very good data that show that boards of companies that have a more diverse board actually make more money. They're more competitive because you get different views around the table. You don't get the same old. You actually get different views, and from that you get a different and better way forward. So diversity is not just a good thing to be socially inclusive and to be fair and so on. It's also a good business and a good innovative decision. And we need to make that front and central. This is not tokenism. This is about not only fairness, it's also about good business. And then I think we need to be proactive. And that's about having a choice. We need to make sure that we can create institutions where women feel comfortable, for example, or minorities of whatever sort feel comfortable, and actually where you can then at the final decision making have a choice. And in the European Innovation Council, we've done an experiment where we essentially said that we wanted to come to the jury process a certain percentage of companies that had female CEOs or female founders. And then you can make the choice on excellence. And when you do that, the results from the EIC are clear. 3 times the number of women funded than previously. But these are really excellent companies. They weren't funded just because they were women. They were funded because they were encouraged to come forward. People had a choice, and then they made that choice based on excellence. And I think that principle, which we've also employed in Science Foundation Ireland, of making sure there's a choice. For example, if I am shortlisting for a senior position and the headhunter brings me an all-male portfolio, I don't even take it to committee. I send it back and say, you haven't done your job properly. I actually want you to find some really excellent people who are women or who are people of colour, whatever the minority may be. So it's about having that choice, but still making the decision based on excellence. So there's parity of esteem for all of the people who are appointed. And if we do that, it then becomes autocatalytic because people know that there's an environment where these things are supported, where they can grow and flourish on merit, and they are attracted to those systems. So I think it's all about this kind of proactive involvement, but not in any way demeaning in terms of quality or standing, whatever minority it is that you're trying to promote. It's about choice, and it's a really important and good business decision.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Dietmar.
I think this is a very important topic. I said before that there are 2 aspects of Europe that I see as particular strengths, one being diversity, the other being scale from a perspective of getting innovation going. And I think Goya is exactly right. We do not want to wait another 120 or 100 years. So action is needed. And obviously, we're coming into difficult trade-offs here because we do not want to signal that by taking action and by having certain rules of representation, we do not want to get into a quality discussion or something like that. Unfortunately, we don't have to. The experience that I have had, we have many initiatives in the German science sector right now that have helped to do more for participation of women and other groups in inventive processes and so forth. But in the field of innovation, and Mark referred to that, we're still a little bit behind. We have managed in the supervisory boards of public companies and so forth. But if you look at the share of female inventors at the European Patent Office, you come up with numbers between 5 and 10%, depending on the country you are looking at. That is almost shameful. We're impoverishing ourselves, not just in the monetary sense, because we're not getting those ideas, but also in the creative sense, because a discussion that is dominated by, say, males may also turn stale. We know that, and we need to take action on that.
Thanks a lot, Dietmar. I just would like you to think about a sentence that I could share with the member state representative I will meet this afternoon. I give you something like 2 minutes to think about it. Please think about it, just a sentence. I will use this opportunity because we are close to the end of this session to also answer a number of questions that came in the chat box from the audience and maybe to clarify a number of things. The EIC Forum is not yet existing. I mean, the EIC Forum, it was one of the questions, is a novelty that will be introduced and that will start to be operational at the beginning of next year, the moment of the launch of Horizon Europe and of the beginning of the launch in particular of its third pillar. But of course, in order to be operational, we have already to think about it and to start discussing with the various actors we would like to involve. It's absolutely true that it could be also a very helpful place where we could use the opportunity to have various type of actors in order to start to speak the same language. It's true that one of the difficulties that we may have today in the relationship between the various actors of innovation, if I take the example of investors and by opposition the academics, the language used is not always the same. In reality, sometimes words are not have not the same meaning depending on the various communities, and this is certainly something that we have to try to help. And of course, in the EIC Forum, we will not address only deep tech startup and SMEs. This is, of course, a particular focus, but we will also talk about the whole innovation ecosystem, including, for example, SMEs that are led by incremental innovation. We remain with only 2 minutes, and now I would like to ask you, honorable speakers, what are the key messages I have to share this afternoon with the member state representative with whom I will talk about the EIC Forum, coming from the innovation actors. Let's start with Heidi.
Thank you. That was a really tough task for 2 minutes. So thank you for challenging us. And I was thinking of EIC Forum as the service provider in its best meaning, being able to provide the value that is actually needed on that lowest possible level, so that if we think of all the local entrepreneurs and innovators that can be empowered, so that why don't we think of that as providing the best value as the service provider?
Thank you. Joya.
One word, unite.
Excellent synthesis. Mark.
I'm going to give you several words, very long sentence, an Irish sentence. So the forum would be joined up, inclusive, complementary ecosystem, drawing on the strengths of national and European systems to grow and scale market-creating companies that are addressing important problems in a responsible way.
Many thanks, Mark. And Dietmar?
I would like to emphasize that policy is here in a serving role. It does not lead, it enables, it empowers, it shouldn't restrict, and it should set innovators in Europe free and bring them together and not give them a new rule set by which to behave.
I think it was a perfect conclusion. I'd like to thank you warmly. I thought it was a very, very useful and fruitful discussion this morning. We will come back on the EIC Forum very soon. Many thanks, honorable speakers, and I would like to thank also the audience that have assisted to this session. Thanks a lot, and enjoy the rest of the day during the RNI days. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.